Hey folks, Kilt-Man here, Kilt-Man at your services. How are you all? We're all doing very, very well. Now, I've covered The Brood, I've covered Scanners, I've covered Videodrome. We were leading up to this one, perhaps the greatest of David Cronenberg's movies, The Fly from 1986. Wow, the era of body horror, which of course David Cronenberg had actually pretty much pioneered with films like Shivers, Rabid, The Brood, and onwards. But this, the 80s, with Scanners and Videodrome and the likes of American Wealth in London and The Thing, body-popping metamorphoses and transformations, well, 10 a penny. So this Grand Guignol interpretation of an original 1957 short story by George Lagerland, it's probably pronounced Lagerland, something like that, which was published in Playboy magazine and caused quite a furore, and then was filmed by Kurt Newman in 1958 with Vincent Price and David Hedison. Everyone always thinks it's Vincent Price who becomes the Fly. It's not, it's David Hedison who becomes the Fly. And it's his little head on top of the fly creature in the web at the end. Help me, as a bloody big spider's descending on him. But of course in that version, which again is body horror, but it's also the bug-eyed alien monster type thing, bug-eyed creature, because when the teleportation device goes wrong for him, or rather it doesn't go wrong, once again, as in this version, it's the fly in the ointment. It's a pesky little fly that gets in there and screws up the whole disintegration and reintegration of the person being moved from one pod to the other. And it fuses the two. Only David Hedison comes out with a great big fly head, whereas the fly's buzzing around with his head. He gets a fly arm as well. And it was a great big success, actually. And it is a great little pop horror movie from the 50s, a creature feature. And of course, at the end of it, not only do they have to kill the little fly with the human head with a rock to spare him the fate of being devoured by a spider, something which is taking place, I'll point up there in the corner, that far corner, as I explained to you in yesterday's video about the delay in getting this video out to you. There is a big spider up there who's still got the carcass of the fly he was devouring yesterday for his afternoon snack today. But his wife has to destroy him in a flatbed press by crushing, his fly bits and bobs. And then she's on trial for murder, of course, and has to explain herself. Well, David Cronenberg thought, well, I like, this is a great premise. This is a wonderful idea, and it fits into everything that his oeuvre was all about. Science gone awry, disease, mutation, all the things which floated his boat. And he thought, well, I can work with this. So, together with Charles Edward Pogue, and produced by Mel Brooks and Stuart Cornfield, Mel Brooks said, don't put my name on this, because like with The Elephant Man, which he got The Elephant Man off the ground for David Lynch, he said, you put my name on it, people are going to go in expecting a comedy, so you're going to have to take my name off it. But it's down to Mel Brooks, the likes of The Elephant Man, more body horror, I know, and this got made. But Cronenberg said, well, we've got to go further into this because there's a great sort of relationship dynamic in there between the mad professor, the fly-headed professor, and his wife. And of course you've got Vincent Price in there as well, as I think he's the brother-in-law, I think, if I remember rightly. And the original short story is actually set in France, whereas the Kurt Newman version is set in, 50s Canada. So the connection there with Canadian filmmaker David Cronenberg, it was obvious, it was set in stone, this sort of thing. It was bound to happen. He had to make this movie. And of course, it's set and filmed in Toronto. Now, Cronenberg said, look, I want to make these characters genuinely three-dimensional, very humanistic. I mean, I'm going to go into all the plot, obviously, of course I am. But you know the film anyway. And I did implore you yesterday, those of you who saw that video, to watch The Fly in preparation for this big, in-depth dissection. Cronenberg credits himself for rewriting most of the movie. Charles Edward Pogue's script, he said, all the finite elements are there, the basic gist of it is there, but I gave more depth to the characters. I changed one character from being an out-and-out villain into a very humanistic, three-dimensional character. That's Stathis Borans, played by John Getz, who is the love rival in it. But I also fleshed out the main two characters, which would be Seth Brundle, the mad scientist played by Jeff Goldblum, who has invented a successful teleportation device. But then the cruel whims of fate conspire to put a fly in with him when he goes through and he begins to mutate. We know this. We know it's going to happen. And then you've got Gina Davis playing Veronica Quint, I think her name is. Weird name, Quint. Like got a lisp. But known as Ronnie. Veronica, Ronnie. And their burgeoning relationship becomes a tragic love story. But we're going to come into all of this. But Cronenberg said, I actually worked a lot on this script and I reworked pretty much everything. And the finished film is just, it's exactly how he wanted it to be. There's a few alternate endings which we'll discuss later. But anyway, the original 1958 Fly was a rip-roaring success. It spawned 2 sequels. Return the Fly, again with Vincent Price, not as good. And then one filmed in the UK called Curse of the Fly. These are all behind me here, all of them, which really wasn't very good at all. A few nice ideas in it, but really not a good film. But the original Fly remained a huge sort of cultural, very impactful sort of genre movie. People fondly remember it. Critics actually applauded it. But it had elements which Cronenberg said, I can't use that. I'm not going to have an outsized fly head on my main character. I'm not doing that. And also the attempt to make the fly's compound vision like a mosaic shot through a prism of what its vision is. He said, don't like that at all. He said, what my film would be about, it's not just grafting on a fly head and a fly arm to a human being, but I'm going to break it down to genetic, molecular level so that the two beings will be spliced together and become an entirely separate new identity, which will evolve throughout the movie. Which, of course, I said grand guignol before. As stomach churning as this movie turned out to be, people flocked to see it. People loved it. A lot of people who don't even like horror movies went to see this film because of the metaphor for AIDS and disease, growing old, watching a loved one disintegrate and die before your very eyes, the aging process, and just how to deal with a despairing, deteriorating relationship. A lot of women loved The Fly because of all that. They bought into the relationship between Seth and Ronnie. They understood that. And the other thing about looking in a mirror, as Cronenberg always says, looking in a mirror or in the confines and privacy of your own bathroom and discovering a lump, a tumour, a lesion, and then the realization that you may actually have a terminal disease, a cancer, AIDS. He's always said, even though 86, it was kind of the height of the AIDS epidemic, he said the film is not a metaphor for that. I did not think of it in those terms. I thought of it as the process of grieving, denial, anger, acceptance, and fatalism. He wanted to go through all that in the progress of this movie, but study disease and what disease really is, and the weird attraction and beauty of cancerous growths. Well, that's Cronenberg for you. That's how he views things. We said even cancer is changing the cells into something else. And he finds that fascinating. What is it that's becoming? It's almost got a purpose of its own. So with The Fly, and with many of his other movies, but The Fly really is the culmination of a lot of these ideas. He wanted to study it and express it visually. But people enjoyed it because of what they perceived as being the AIDS metaphor and this whole relationship breakdown. So it works on so many different levels. So what's it about then, Kilt-Man? Oh, before we start, I have left the back door open. Reason being, as many regular viewers will know, if I leave the back door open, because we've got a big garden there full of trees and shrubs, and we've got a big husky dog that goes out and does their business, yeah, it's unpleasant, I know, but flies will come in. So many a video has happened when a fly has gone buzzing round, and I've always gone, oh, a little cameo appearance from Jeff Goldblum. Now, when I really want one to come in and actually just sit on the lens, that's sit, not shit on the lens, sit on the lens, and that would be great, wouldn't it? It'd be perfect. But you watch. Oh no, there won't be a single fly at all. There'd be no buzzing, just bird song. And Howard Shore's fantastic, gothic, and very emotional score for David Cronenberg's The Fly. Anyway, so, the scientist, Seth Brundle, named after Martin Brundle, Formula One race driver, because Cronenberg's into racing. Who knew? Actually, I always knew that, but I never made the connection. A lot of the names his characters have in movies are taken from Formula One racing drivers. So, go figure. But Seth Brundle has invented a teleportation device. And he has, in this warehouse loft laboratory. A lot of Cronenberg's movies revolve around warehouses in Toronto, downtown Toronto. Very ominous places. They're in a lot of his movies, and this one is no exception. He speaks to a journalist and unwittingly invites her back. This will be Veronica, Ronnie, Gina Davis, who was Jeff Goldblum's girlfriend at the time. That's how she got the part. Originally, Cronenberg wanted, what's her name? Linda Hamilton, Sarah Connor, in the original Terminator. And what happens at the end of the Terminator? She crushes the Terminator in a big industrial flatbed press. Shades of the original The Fly, where Helen, I think her name is, crushes her fly-headed husband in an industrial flatbed press. Ta-da! So it would have been nice and poetic, but he couldn't get it. So Jeff Goldblum suggested, well, my girlfriend, Gina, I've already acted with her. He's in Transylvania 5000, before this, then The Fly. And then he'd star with her again in Earth Girls Are Easy as well. And they didn't stay together though. Their marriage didn't last more than about 4 or 5 years, I don't think. But he suggested her, and Cronenberg thought, well, because Goldblum was a tall, 6'4", lanky, and he got in shape, so muscular character. I need a woman that can play opposite him. And Gina Davis is tall as well. So the two fit the screen perfectly well together, with no one standing on boxes, no one on their knees. And they have a genuine relationship to enhance and magnify all the emotions that they're going to have to go through. So it's perfection. So she gets the role. Now she plays a journalist who's after the next big story. And a big sort of press sort of showcase for all these scientists. He says, so I've got something back at my lab which you need to see. This is going to change the world forever. And she goes, well, can you just tell me what it is right now? Well, in front of all these other scientists who've also got ideas that they think are going to change the world forever. Well, what makes yours so special? Well, mine really works. So she goes back. And to try and prove it, he has these telepods there. And he said, I need something of yours, something personal. So a nice little seductive scene. She takes a stocking off. Use that. So in the big telepods, the telepods in this are modelled on the cylinders on David Cronenberg's own motorbike, the Ducati, believe it or not. And she just thinks, what, are these some kind of new sort of phone boxes? Haven't we got enough of those already? And puts his computer on, bazzazz, and ball of light, it's gone. Where's it gone? It's over in that one. The big hatch door opens. There's your stocking. Feel it? It's yours. It's your stocking. How did you do that? Well, it's a lot of science goes into it, and he tentatively explains. And then she's got a tape recorder, and stupidly, the dim-witted boffin has actually brought back a journalist. This is one of the things that he was at a big press sort of showcase for science, and surely she must have introduced herself as a journalist for Particle magazine. And he said, "Oh, you can't write this up. You can't put it in your magazine." "Oh no, the world's not ready for this yet. I'm not finished. It's missing one thing. I can only send inanimate objects through. I haven't sent a living thing through." Anyway, so what's going to happen is she's going to go back to her company, Particle magazine, her publisher, and it's run by this yuppie demon from hell. What's his name? Stathis Borans, played by John Getz, who's great. Think Ellis from Die Hard. In fact, when Die Hard came out a couple of years afterwards, and Ellis was in there as a smarmy bastard like in the Nakatomi Plaza, who pays the ultimate price, of course. I kept thinking, he's just Stathis from The Fly, it's just the yuppie demon. I'm the big go-getter, but I'll stab anyone in the back to get where I want to be. But he's got no morals, and he's a dirty, sleazy bastard as well. And he is Ronnie's former lover. He used to live in her apartment with her, but they maintain a working relationship. But he's still sniffing around all the time, and he's horrible. But there's a lot of cleverness with this role, which Cronenberg put in there. In the original Pogue screenplay, Stathis is an out-and-out villain throughout the entire movie. But Cronenberg rewrote that to give him more facets and more dimensionality, and it really does work. He is an annoying bastard throughout most of it, and he's a total dirty sleaze bucket as well. But he will come good though, and he will pay a price. It'll cost him an arm and a leg, literally. I didn't even know I was going to come up with that line then. Oh, by the way, cheers, y'all. No whiskey in the house, I'm afraid. So make do with this. So Stathis doesn't believe any of this. He's just, what? Oh, the old two telepods. You know, that's an old stage trick. You know, it's just a magic show. The guy's a con man. Don't fall for it. But she goes back and she begins to gain quite a big interest in our boy, Dr. Seth. And the two of them begin a relationship. And it's kind of nice because he's the nerdy comic book kid, the science nerd, the big geek from high school who probably hasn't had too much in the way of the flesh. Cronenberg's other major elements from all his movies, the flesh. Mutating, changing, the enjoyment of flesh, the beauty of flesh, the horror of flesh. Well, before he gets into the full mutating horror of flesh, Seth Brundle gets a bit of the loving side of flesh as well. But in their lovemaking, a little microchip, yes, a microchip, which he'd lost, gets stuck on his back, and oh, what's that? And she pulls it out. He leaves 3 little scratches on his back. He begins to realise that her former boyfriend is still sniffing around, doesn't like it. He's now encountered jealousy, which he's never really felt before. She is now filming this because she has realised, look, yeah, I do believe what you're doing is going to change the world. So I want to film this, I want to write it up. And he said, well, okay, I'll let you do it if we do it as a book. So you film me and report on the whole process from beginning to end. And the ending will be me going through the telepods. We're going to build up to that. How does that grab you? Because that will change the world. But it's the whole thing, the whole caboodle. So she's okay, yeah, we'll do it that way. So they begin to experiment with other things. And he's got a couple of baboons, as you do, from the baboon shop down the road. And baboons are very hard to work with. You can't train baboons, and they're very, very wild and very dangerous. Cronenberg said, well, the baboon that they use, because only one they actually use in the movie, had the hots for one of the girls behind the scenes, but she's only small, so this thing could literally destroy her if it wanted to. But it formed a genuine bond with Jeff Goldblum because Goldblum is 6'4" and quite possibly the tallest guy on the set, and he bulked up a little bit for the role, which you'll see a lot of his body in this movie. The baboon saw him as the alpha male, and they bonded, so he could control him, and the baboon wrangler managed to control this baboon. And in the film, you genuinely feel for the two baboon characters that are in it. And so they send the baboon through, and the computer does all this telepod 1, telepod 2, it does all its little computations, and what comes through on the other side is the famous inside out baboon. Blood everywhere, and it's just pulsating. It's a bloody mess. It's failed. In a great emotional moment, and Ronnie's filming this. Look, tell the world how you feel. Just tell them what you're feeling right now. And he's like, fuck it, I can't fucking believe it. Genuine rage comes out, but then sorrow, because he can't why won't the computer work out what's happening with the flesh? And it's during their lovemaking that he realises his eureka moment. And don't we all get those, your execs? And the flesh, I've got to teach the computer about the flesh. There's a bit of naivety here. How is he going to do that? The computer doesn't understand flesh. So he goes into, well, we don't see it, but clearly he's got to educate it. And he begins to start typing away. I mean, this is a guy who's probably just had sex for the first time in his life. And is now just the flesh. There we go. Computer. And anyway, it works. Obviously days, maybe weeks have passed, but it works, and they send the baboon through in a suspenseful moment. On the second telepod, the door comes back, smoke comes out. You're like, the baboon leaps out into his arms, and they're made up with it. They're going to send it off for tests, which could take weeks, maybe months, he says. But Gina Davis is Ronnie. She's like, well, we've got to get the story out there. It works. Seth, this works. It's going to change everything. And you think about it, it would. In a throwaway little bit of discourse near the start, he explains how it could change. Be no need for borders, be no country identities, no nationalities anymore. You think about the greater ramifications of being able to go anywhere in the world. It would change everything, which is why, of course, this sort of device would be heavily weaponized. Corrupt government departments with agencies would take it in their wing and lock it away in that big hangar next to the Ark of the Covenant, that sort of thing. But in theory, in an altruistic society, altruistic world, that would bring down every border, every barrier that the human race has. And you'd have no need of postman or Amazon Prime. Things would arrive straight away. You could pop over to someone's house in Tasmania, if you want to do that, if you know anybody in Tasmania. And it'd be great. So it works, but suddenly Stathis Borans, the former lover, the head of Particle magazine, he's taking a bit more interest in it, but he's actually really being a snidey little bastard, and he's trying to inveigle his way back into the life of Ronnie. And so a package has been sent to Seth's laboratory, and he said, oh, I've got this thing as well, Particle magazine, isn't that who you work for? Yeah, and she opens it up, but she realises what's happening, that this guy's trying to get involved. He says, look, I've got to go and sort something else, sort something out from my prior life. I've got to scrape it off my shoe. And off she goes to go and see Seth. And to go and see Stathis Borans. See, the names are crazy, aren't they? To go and see him. And they will arrange a sort of working relationship deal about this whole project. But of course, Stathis has to be it. She goes, I've stumbled onto something big. Oh, well, what's that? His cock. He's you want to punch him right in the face, but he's so great at the same time. And said, well, look, okay, we'll be working partners. No more than that. Let's see this project through. Let's get this to work. And I'll help along. And then okay. Thanks, Stathis. As she's about to walk out, he says, oh, by the way, as working partners, we can still have sex, can't we? You're like, oh, you just give it a rest, man. Because he's jealous that she's sleeping with him now. And he can't let go. So, during that night, they've had a celebration with champagne. We've already kind of worked out, folks, a fly is in the room. I don't know where it's gone, though. Oh, it just went past the monitor screen here. Come here. I could do with a fly wrangler now. Come on. So I put a bit of a chocolate bar on the side or something like that. That's another thing. In this movie, you'll hear the term chocolate bar, whereas if it's made in America, you'd hear candy bars. But in Canada, they call them chocolate bars, and we call them chocolate bars here as well in the UK. So I don't even really pick up on it, but someone said, oh yeah, that's another way you can tell it's Canadian. Oh, right, okay. But so they've had champagne, and we know that he's not the greatest drinker in the world. And he begins to realise, I'm jealous of this other guy. Oh, she's gone back to him. Oh, the old boyfriend thing. Oh, that's what it is. Particle magazine. He runs that, doesn't he? Oh. So he gets pissed on champagne, and then thinks, during a moment like this, I'm going to go through. I'm going to test it now myself. Why the hell not? He picks up the baboon. He goes, you should be going off the test. And he's like, there's nothing wrong with you. I can see that. They've already sent an uncooked steak through, and then cooked it. And they've got one which didn't go through, and he's made Ronnie as a guinea pig test them, eat them. To test it, it's gone through the telepod. What's it like? It's cooked. I've cooked it. It's all right. She tastes it. She goes, oh no, I can't eat that. What's wrong with it? It tastes synthetic. And he's like, synthetic. That's where he's getting on this whole got to teach the computer about the flesh thing. So, but he can see the baboon's all right. I'm not going to send you off for tests. I'm going to do it now myself. So he goes in, doesn't he? But you've seen the baboon ominously and foreshadowingly. There's a fly buzzing around, and it's going like that. This fly. It looks digital, that fly, to me. There's no digital effects in this movie. It's all practical effects. And what that was in reality was a real fly, but pinned on a fishing rod, and they were dangling in front of the baboon, and the baboon is going for it like. Well, that fly gets in the telepod, doesn't it? In the other telepod. Door comes across. Computer says, teleportation successful. The nude Jeff Goldblum strides out. Looking, pure Nietzschean ideal. But he ain't just Seth Brundle anymore. Where's the fly gone? The fly and Seth have been assimilated together on a genetically molecular fundamental level. So they are now going to evolve together. There's humanity there and there's flyity there. And so the insect and the human are now together in one ever-changing, metamorphosizing body. But he doesn't realise anything's wrong at first. He's got super strength, he's super agile, in a great sequence, which is actually done with a variety of gymnastic doubles for him. They've just had a riotous hours-long sex session because now there's no stopping him, and he just doesn't want to let go. And she's knackered, obviously. And the scratch on his back from the little microchip that got wedged in there as she reaches. Oh, hang on, this little coarse hairs. Leave my new hairs alone. I kind of like them. I spent most of my life waiting for a hairy body, and I'm proud of them now. And but you see him doing all like handstand push-ups. Because it's a warehouse with a big loft apartment. There's all like lots of open gantries and staircases and bars and pipes and things across. He's got a gymnastic setup, high bars. So he's managing to swing himself around and do lots of strength and agility stuff and sort of run across the ceiling. And she gets up and does that sexy female thing of putting on the man's shirt. I've never liked that. Take my fucking shirt off, bitch. Use your own fucking shirt. It's mine, that. And she's quite impressed by this new, wow, that obviously works for you going through. So he's made up with himself and he feels it's purified me. I'm bigger, better, stronger. It's deconstructed me and then rebuilt me in the shape I've always dreamt of. Now there's no limits. It isn't just a transportation device. It does so much more. In a famous scene, they're in a coffee shop and he's just rabbiting on endlessly about, and in a loud voice, he's putting 1,000,000 sugars into his cappuccino, 1,000,000 sugars, and she's watching this like, do you want some coffee with your sugar? He should put more in, but he won't stop. That scene was only half written. When he started filming it, there was only a handful of lines in there. Jeff Goldblum, and they hastily wrote a load more. Jeff Goldblum had to learn that on the spec and then ad-lib plenty. It's genius, it's pure Goldblum. It's rabbiting endlessly with all the nuances and ticks and all the little, idiosyncrasies. The eccentricity of Jeff Goldblum is translated visually and verbally right in front of you on camera. It's amazing. And but his short fuse is beginning to be noticed as well. Anyway, I think I will have that, whatever dish it was like that she's eating. Waiter, waiter, God damn it, Getting a bit fucking, a bit of anger management necessary. So she will then realise, you're changing, mate. You're changing a little bit, but this is the new me. You should go through. You should go through it. This is great. It isn't just moving from one place to another. It's changing you. It change me. It'll change you. Come on, you'll be part of the dynamic duo team. We can rule the world. Blah 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 blah. And she's like, no. But he's getting really angry with it. You're going into this fucking... No, I'm not going... I said I was afraid of it. I don't want to do it. I'm not going to do it. So, well, you're a fucking drag. You know, you're bringing me down. You won't do it. I'll find someone else that can do it. You know, so he storms off. She's bought him, in the meantime, a very lovely vintage style brown leather aviator jacket, which looks really good. And I've got one that's just the same. And I should have brought it down for a bit of a prop, shouldn't I? Damn it. So this is the famous, he storms off into the night, into the Toronto night. He's got no top on underneath this jacket. And it's pretty cold in Toronto. And he's just storming. Super tall, Jeff Goldblum, lanky legs, down the street. Goes to a bar, doesn't he? You know what this scene is. There's a very attractive rock chick, Chicky Rock, at the bar, called Tawny, I think her name is. But it's two guys arm wrestling. This is where the chocolate bar remark comes in. If you listen in this sequence, you'll hear Brian Ferry and the song that he created for this movie called Help Me. Help Me, for the original movie. And it was meant to play over the end credits, as a lot of films in the 80s did do. A lot of films still do today. But Cronenberg said, yeah, look, I like the song, but it doesn't fit. And it would not fit the end credits. So you only hear it in this sequence. And even then, it's actually kind of muffled and in the background anyway. But he gets himself a scotch. I feel jealous because I wish I could get myself a scotch right now. But I'm just going to make do with bloody Bud. And he says to Tony, who's winning? I want Marky to win. Because I want Marky tonight. So well, I want you tonight. And they go, hey mate, you know, hey mate. They're not in Liverpool. Hey mate, leave me fucking Judy alone, will you? You know, fucking do one, will you, la? But they're taking the piss out of him. Now, Marky is a big guy. He's something Chuvalo. I think his name is Nigel Chuvalo. No, it's not Nigel. But his surname is Chuvalo. And he's a Canadian heavyweight boxer. He's fought Muhammad Ali. He's fought George Foreman as well. And so he says, look, $100, says, I'm going to beat you. This is Seth to this guy. He's like, what? Take a hike. You know, no, here's my 100. Put it down now. And the two of them arm wrestle. Come on, Marky, you take him. You know, you can't take him because he's got fly strength. And yeah, you get the wrist and forearm snap. Oh! And then you got poor old Marky, this big fucking beefcake. He's going as the bone protrudes and blood just spews out. Oh God. And it's a great shock moment. And you go, oh, Jesus. I remember that flicks when I first saw it. And I'd seen imagery in Fangoria magazine, so I knew what was coming up. But it's just the noise, the snap, and the reaction. To get the reaction from everybody else around, Cronenberg secretly told the cast, the rest of the crew, to make a huge bang. So everyone jumped in unison, which worked perfectly on camera. And Seth just grabs the girl, off they go. And clearly they've been having a good session. And he shows her. He goes from one telepod to the other. And he says, right, your turn, come on. And he's going to throw it in there. But Gina Davis, Ronnie, suddenly reappears. And she's like, you know, the girl's going, I'm afraid. You know, there's nothing to be afraid of. Be afraid. Be very afraid. The famous tagline, which has been mimicked so much since the movie came out. Cronenberg even says these days that I reckon no one even remembers that this is the film that phrase came from. Because it's been used at political rallies, it's been on TV shows, other movies. It's been parodied a hell of a lot. But it came here first. Be afraid. Be very afraid. So anyway, Tony, who's this then? Did I tell you I live with my mother? Because she said to him, I'll come back to yours because I live with my mother. And Tony just does one. So then they had a big sort of lovers tiff. You know, you didn't waste much time. You know, well, you were going off to see your Stathis brands, weren't you? Oh, is that it? You were jealous. And so they get this sort of lovers tiff. And then he tells her, you know, I want you to go through. Just go through it again. And she will not do this. And then his rage, look, you're sick. Can't you see that? You've changed. You look bad and you smell bad. And his skin has begun to discolour. There's lesions on his skin. He looks swarthy, almost gypsy-like. But when only when we've been pinpointed the fact that his skin's changed, you go, oh yeah, it has, yeah. All these little pock marks and weirdness and blotches, and more these little fly hairs coming up. Those hairs on his back from the previous cut, she'd snipped them off, and she goes, Mike, these are really coarse. And he's like, I'm proud of them, you know. You don't want your body covered in these things, but snips them off. And I had those hairs analysed, and the scientists, they couldn't work out what they were. They said they definitely weren't human. They were possibly more insect. So you're sick. Something bad happened. Something went wrong when you went through. No, nothing went wrong. Could a sick man do this? And he starts punching out the door frame. Solid wood. Great sequence. Could a sick man do that? I feel great. You're going in this thing. Oh, no, this ain't happening. So she leaves again, and he begins to realise when nails start dropping off, pus shoots out of his fingertips, his teeth begin to fall out, his hair's falling out. Hang on a minute, yeah, something must have gone wrong here. What really happened? So he goes back to the original teleportation info on the computer, his memory banks. What exactly went through there? What happened? And he sees that there was in these kind of cute animated computer graphics, there's him in there, and there's something else in there. Well, what the hell's that like? And computer analysed this, and anyway, he will work out that a fly was in there, a common house fly. And well, what happened to the fly? He's asking this. Well, assimilation was complete. Subject Brundle, subject housefly fused together, and he's just like, it's one of those great big. Goldblum has one of the greatest faces ever. Chris Walas, who does the effects for this, and got an Academy Award for it as well, for the effects in The Fly. And he worked on Gremlins, he worked on Raiders of the Lost Ark, he worked on Scanners as well, done many movies, but he got the Academy Award for this, and a couple of Saturn Awards I think as well. And he said like, oh, Goldblum's great, but he's got one of the worst faces to work with, because it's a big nose, and those eyes are fucking huge, you know, and he's just, and it's so much mannerisms and expressions that he goes through. It's hard to take a cast of him and then make it so when we put the prosthetics on him, that you can still see him through it, because it was essential that Goldblum would still be in the bodysuit and all the makeup throughout the majority of the movie. Only when you get the full final creature at the end is it not going to be Goldblum. But even then, Chris Whaler said, I want you to give me a tick, a mannerism that you've got, which I can use on the puppet, which you'll see. And he said, well, okay, I move my eyes a lot, I'm always looking around, which Goldblum does anyway, but he massively exaggerated it for this character and the nuances of this idiosyncratic, eccentric boffin. A boffin and a buffoon, when they're assimilated, make a baboon. I should have worked that one out beforehand, shouldn't I? I'm sure that didn't really work. So yeah, but Goldblum's face, those eyes, those big googly eyes, which in this, they seem to be slightly enlarged. And Goldblum was seen in many films before this. He's one of the home invaders and rapists in the original Death Wish. Obviously, he's in the fabulous Philip Kaufman remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers from 1978, opposite Donald Sutherland and Leonard Nimoy as well in that. And he's great. I've always loved Goldblum, and I love him even more these days. Now he's got his jazz band together. He's just a phenomenal character. But all those ticks and nuances create this indelible, hero / victim / monster, because he's all of these things rolled into one. There's another fusion for you. So anyway, Ronnie comes back and he has to see it. He's like, you were right, I'm so sorry, but yeah. She's like, oh my God, what the hell? And he's become this straggly, misshapen thing, but it's still him talking. And he said, look, I think, and he's got all these even more nervous ticks. And he's like, well, I think this has changed me on a fundamental level. Me and the fly are together in one, but we're becoming something else. We're becoming Brundlefly. Yay! And that's where the name came from, the Brundlefly. And he said, look, start recording again, because obviously I'm now the test subject. The whole study should be about what's happening to me now. I mean, the thing is, and this is the big cruel irony, those telepods work. They genuinely work. But that's all forgotten about now, because I'm the big deal now. I'm becoming a new entity, a new being, a new creature in existence. It's never been seen before. It's never lived before, and I'm becoming it, whatever it is, whatever its purpose is. So we got lots of spiel about insect politics and what cancer and disease want with the body. They have a desire. They are changing things, but for what purpose? What am I becoming? So on camera, how does Brundlefly eat? Well, he found out the long and painful way that it's much like a fly does. I regurgitate this vomit drop. Because he's got to break down food before he can then drink it up. Oh dear God. So you see this. Oh, and it's a great shot because she videotapes all this and takes it back for Stathis Borans, her ex. And he's watching it. And John Getz had terrible migraines whilst filming this. So Cronenberg said, I spotted him with his head in his hands. He said, this is the migraine. He said, when we're shooting, keep your head in your hands. I like it. Do it. So in a lot of these scenes, he's forever sort of doing this. And when he's watching the videotapes of, and you hear the sound effects, and he's going, oh my God, Jesus. But another shock's to come. Ronnie is pregnant. Oh, Jesus. She's terrified. What's it gonna be? You know? So she wants it removed. It might be fine, but it might be great. It might be no. I want it out of me now. She'll have another confrontation with Seth, where he will then give the ultimatum to her. He's changed even more, rapidly mutating into something else. There's lots of bits of him in the medicine cabinet. There's a lot of bits and bobs. His right ear falls off in a conversation with Ronnie as well, and she just hugs him. But if you look at her face, Gina Davis did not know they were going to do that effect. It's just a prosthetic ear, which they just pulled off from beneath the table or chair he's sitting on. But she didn't expect it. Her look of revulsion and shock is genuine. But then she has to go and hug him as well. But then he would deliver the speech about insect politics. Oh God, he's and he's all twitchy and all that, and she doesn't want to get too near him, and she knows she's carrying his child. Oh, Jesus Christ! And he says but insects, they're very cruel, very brutal. There's no compassion, there's no empathy, no understanding. Maybe I could become the first insect politician. And he's sort of twitching and all over the place. And she's just going, I don't know what you're saying. And then he said, because it kind of gets me. You know, I get emotional over these things. And he says, what I'm saying is, if you stay, I'll hurt you. Or I'll hurt you if you stay. I think that's the line. And so she just flees out of the place. We've got flies and fleas now. She flees from the laboratory. But she goes outside into the waiting arms of Stathis, who was brought her there. And she said, it's too late now, it's just too late. I want this thing out of me now. He's too far gone. I can't go back, can't go through this. I've got to get this baby out of me. In a Quasimodo, like Hunchback of Notre Dame element, he's on the roof looking down and he overhears this. He's like, no, because he's got that's my child in there. So the human side of him still wants. That could be the last bit of humanity that I've got. You can't get rid of it. So anyway, John Getz, Stathis Borans, and Ronnie go off to see Dr. Cheevers, and Dr. Cheevers is played by Les Carlson, who we last saw in Videodrome as the guy that runs Spectacular Optical, the guy that wants to send the Videodrome signal out across North America and wipe out millions of people, millions of sleazebags. And that's him as the chief medical. And he's going, why has it got to be done now? Well, we have reason to believe that the child will be horribly deformed. And he looks at Stathis. He goes, "Are you the father?" He goes, "No. The father's very badly deformed, and he's got other issues, shall we say. We want it out now." So you've had the nightmare sequence as well. You guys know this. This is where women go in the audiences, because you've had this sequence of the birth and the abortion, and the doctor is played by David Cronenberg himself, who brings out, because Gina Davis said, because she's got to have her legs up like that, and someone probing round down in the nether regions, and lots of special effects going off. She said to David Cronenberg, "I'm not comfortable with anyone else doing this. I want you to do it." So he donned the gown and all that, like, and the apron and all that stuff, and the gloves, and delivers a great big pulsating maggot. But it's just a nightmare. She wakes up, oh God, Jesus. But when she's in the hospital sort of pre-surgery room, and he said, "You sure you want this?" "Yeah, well, okay, well, just make yourself comfortable. We'll be back in a minute." Got one of those fabulous, weird Art Deco thick glass walls. Doesn't last long, because our Brundlefly, comes plunging through it, and he's now, Jeff Goldblum is in the big bodysuit, big, huge, muscly, but it's asymmetrical. One side's lumpier than the other side. One eye's bigger than the other eye. Again, Quasimodo, and he picks her up and jumps out the window, and Stathis Borans and the doctor come running in, and they think they just see them just leap off another building on top of one of the I think it's an institute in Toronto, but it's a real location, and they filmed on the roof there. He's begging her, "Look, I need this baby. You can't kill the baby. You can't, because that's the last piece of me." But he begins to realise, hang on a second, because you've seen him do a lot of other sort of tests, including the famous deleted scene about the cat and the baboon being fused together. Because now he's working out, well, hang on, this thing doesn't just move particles from one place to another. It confused them together. So she's got the baby inside there. How about, and there's 3 telepods, because there's one's a prototype which he initially showed to it, but then the other 2 the working ones. But now he's brought all 3 into play. So what's going to happen is he wants Ronnie in one, he'll be in the other. They will be fused together in nanospace, and the great family dynamic will be born in that other telepod. Father, mother, and baby all in one body. It'll be beautiful, because he's gone now. He's gone completely twisted, hasn't he? And the insect part of him is also it's massively took over. So she doesn't want nothing to do with this. Enter Stathis Borans again, and Stathis brings out one of those great shotguns. There's a lot of shotguns in Cronenberg movies, and they're all click-clacky, fantastic contract. They're all real weapons, and it's a Browning 12 gauge, but it's an over and under. So it's double-barreled, but it's 2 barrels, one on top of the other. And he comes in there into the laboratory, lots of shadows and that, and he puts it all together. And above him, through the skylight, because now he's got a thing for smashing through glass, comes the fly. Brundlefly drops down on him from a great height, and he's like, Stathis Borans now sees him, like that, trying to bring the gun up. Gets the gun battered to one side, but his hand is up like that, and the fly's got his hand, and the fly just goes, vomit drop. His hand, his left hand, just melts down to the bone. Oh, Christ. And he's just in shock, convulsing on the floor. So then, I'll take my time with this. Brundlefly then rolls up a trouser leg from his right leg and goes all over his shin, melts the leg away. There's a foot in the shoe there, right? Which John Getz, the actor, kept that foot in the shoe. Kept it in his fridge, apparently, and used to scare the kids on Halloween with it. But and then in that great moment, because Brundlefly's loving it, he's actually loving these abilities, and you can see it in his face. Goldblum is doing this, emoting through the suit and those eyes, and he's crawling up, and he's going to do the same thing to his head, to his face. And you're like, oh my God, no, don't do this. Stathis is a prick, but don't do this. And you're also thinking, yeah, I want to see this. Sadly, you won't, because Ronnie interrupts this, and thereby saving Stathis Baran's life. You'd have to wait for the multiple face and head melts for The Fly 2, which came out about 3 or 4 years later, directed by the effects guy Chris Walas. And I do like Fly 2, but anyway, we're not here to talk about that right now. And she has a confrontation with Seth, and you can't do this, and he's like, no, well, you know, his voice is now completely fucked up. Even the voice recognition system on the computer doesn't recognise his voice anymore, so he has to do things manually with gloved hands because his hands are all mutated, and he's still trying to, you know, do the keyboards and all that. But he grabs her, and she smacks him in the face, and his jaw breaks off, and then as he retreats back, his head entirely splits open, his eyeballs melt out, and the fly creature, what they christened the space bug, comes out of him with 2 huge, massively exaggerated gold blue eyes, and little sort of weird pincery bits and mandibles and hairs, and it's a great, fantastic animatronic puppet. There are no air bladders used in this. Air bladders have been used extensively throughout all the horror movies and special effects movies from 1980 onwards. And Chris Walas said, look, even housewives know about air bladders now, so there's no secret there, so I'm not going to do any. So it's all elaborate puppetry and animatronics and hydraulics, but no actual air bladders are being used. And the reason why the fly head breaks out and expands, Cronenberg says, well, when baby flies burst out of their pupae, it's their heads inflate to break through it. And it's the only time in their lives when their heads will do that, but the heads will expand and break through, bringing them through. So he said this is the metamorphosis stage. He's coming out of the pupae, which was Seth Brundle's body. So the head was inflated and pushed through, so it breaks out of this latex head, and it's a shocker. But he throws it into the air, one of the telepods, and seals the door, and he sets the computer in motion, and he gets into the other one, and the initiation process begins. There's like 19 seconds left. Now horribly mutilated and horribly injured, Stathis Baran still manages to hobble up, lost a hand, lost a foot, but he's still got his bloody big over and under shotgun, and he manages to prop it up on the stump of his arm, and as it's about to start fusing, he opens the door, gets aired out, that's one thing, and then you can see that the space bug's realising, shit, I'm stuck in this, so and it smashes through the air, the glass door, and begins to come out, but he's shot through the cables, which are going to stop, you know, the full teleportation taking place between Ronnie and him, but his pod will still be teleported. And he's half out of it, so the entire telepod and him have been sent through to the other telepod and fused together. Teleportation successful, assimilate, fusion successful. Oh God, and the music just goes. Howard Shore tells you, oh, this is not going to be good. And then it's so impactful. That door opens on that third telepod. Electro smoke all comes out, and you just hear this terrible groan, and then this thing just comes out and hits the deck, and it's half the space bug, which we've just seen with the big bug eyes, and it's got all the metal coils, which are from the telepod machinery itself, and it's just crawling across the floor in unbelievable agony and just a terrible despair and desperation. Oh, you know, and it's so horrible, so grim. And Ronnie's now got the shotgun. Poor old Stathis is like, he's just off. I'm out of this. I'm bugging out. Hey, flies, fleas, and bugs, and baboons, and she puts the gun up, and it's just it can't even speak now, and it's just going, oh, and with this sort of clawed hand, which is a throwback to the original 1958 version with David Hedison, who in those days was known as Al Hedison, not David, but then changed the name because no one seemed to like Al Hedison. And a throwback to the fly arm that he has with the big pincer. He just grabs the shotgun and just puts it to his head, and then boom, and one of the great head explosions puts him out of his misery, and then the gun just drops, and the film actually ends. And then you would have got that Brian Ferry song "Help Me" at the end, but you can see why that one was not going to work. We just go straight into we carry on with Howard Shore's fabulously brooding, ominous, and very tragic and melancholy score. And the credits come up. Now, originally there was going to be, they filmed about 2 or 3 different endings to this. And they also had a few endings which they never actually filmed. But one that they did film, which was, no one liked it. You're going to have an ending where Ronnie is living back with Stathis. And one version, they'd had the child and the child was normal. One version, they had a child where it was born with butterfly wings. I think there's one version where they don't have the child at all. But they're happily ever after. Well, audiences went, no, she loved Seth, not Stathis. He may have come good at the end by trying to save her and do the right thing in a roundabout sort of way. But she shouldn't be with him. That's completely wrong. So they threw that out, jettisoned that completely, and just left it as is. So you really don't know what's going to happen. And of course, that paved the way for The Fly 2, where Gina Davis did not return for it, although her character does, because she dies in childbirth, giving birth to Martin Brundle, Seth's son, played by Eric Stoltz, and no stranger to prosthetics, having been in The Mask as well, and it's all set at the Bartok Industries scientific lab, where the vicious conglomerate scientific chairman is conducting horrible experiments, and the son only becomes the Fly after about 5 or 6 years old. He begins to develop into it. So, but anyway, that's another story. Jeff Goldblum did not return for that. It'd be a bit difficult, wouldn't it? He completely changed anyway, and he got his head blown apart. But The Fly is a truly magnificent masterpiece of grunge, gore, grue, ghastliness. But again, Cronenberg's amazing ideas. The teleportation device. The reason why Seth works on this, as we discover early on, he has motion sickness. He said even as a child, I puked up on my tricycle. He'll be doing a lot of puking in the rest of the movie. But even at a ride in Ronnie's car, he's feeling queasy. So that's why I spearheaded, his interest in there's got to be another form of transport. It's funny how all of that gets lost in the miasma of effects and gloop and gruesomeness. But the idea remains legit, and then the whole insect politics thing, and the huge deterioration and transformation of the human body. Again, a huge fascination for Cronenberg and for all of us body horror freaks, because it's horror through and through, isn't it? And because we've all had ailments, even a common cold transforms you. Your nose is bunged up, your eyes are gummy, you can't hear properly, your throat's sore. We've all had spots, and I've got one right there which come up, ironically, just before this review. So yeah, your body transforming and noticing changes, and of course cancer and the whole AIDS thing, and the aging process, watching someone you've loved and devoted your life to go through an ordeal, and then having to understand, be afraid of them, possibly be repulsed by them, but still understand and love them, and then have to perform the ultimate and put them out of misery. This film covers all of that. And although it's fun, it's a great horror movie, it is uncomfortable and distressing at the same time. Sorry, it does get me, and this score particularly. So there was the that deleted scene, which you can watch. It's on the disc. It's on YouTube as well, where he does splice together a cat and a baboon, and then in its shrieking agony and its aggression, he'll kill it with a bloody metal pipe in a shocking scene. And the reason why it was cut out is because people did not like that. It turns you against Seth, despite his plight and his desperation. You don't want to see animals, no matter how mutated they are, getting hurt. Something that you do see in The Fly 2 with the dog, and believe you me, I'm not going to talk about that element at all. But he beats it up, like, and then he goes out on the roof and he starts clambering down the side of the wall, and then there's a growth coming out of his stomach, his side, and it's a big insect leg coming out of him, and he starts going mad because he starts wrestling with it, and then he bites through it and severs it, and then falls off the roof again. Like, it's a long sequence, and they filmed all that. I'm not sure where it would fit in the movie, as it turns out. And I think they took it out because it slowed down the pacing as well, and it also it alienated him from the audience, especially if they film what the next bit was, because directly after that, or they didn't film it, you were going to see him down in like the alleyways, going through a dumpster, as flies all want to do. And a bag lady sees him, and he turns on her and pukes up on it, and then devours it. No, I know, let's be honest, we all wish we'd seen that sequence, but they never actually filmed that. But so that sequence was taken out. Again, more alarming effects in there, and just a great horrifying sequence, but it's gone. Many other cut scenes as well, as all films go through. But Cronenberg revisited this in the form of an opera, because the film, as many critics said, and it plays in its favour, it's like a play. You've only literally got three main characters who interact, usually in one static location: an apartment, an office, the laboratory. Okay, you've got the bar and you've got the coffee shop, but that's really it, you know, and there's nobody else in it really. So it could be done as a play, as a 3-act play. The introduction, the metamorphosis and the education process throughout that, and then the grand finale. So David Cronenberg and Howard Shore, who did the score and has scored most, if not all, of Cronenberg's movies, they came up with an opera which played all around the world. And I've not seen it, but I have seen various clips of it, of different people playing the characters and in different languages. But and I think a lot of people said that it's a good telling of the original of that story, of Cronenberg's version of the story. All the emotion is there, the effects are great as well, and the makeup that the guy's wearing, because he does go through all the same metamorphosis, and they do blow him away at the end. That it's a real shocking sequence, apparently, of genuine gore on stage. They said, but what let it down is Howard Shore's music, which is really unbelievable. And they had Placido Domingo actually was the conductor during the actual premiere of it. Go figure that. Cronenberg, Domingo and Howard Shore together with an opera. People say that the opening bars and closing bars of Howard Shore's score mimic the music of Madame Butterfly, which of course Cronenberg would go on to make a movie of Madame Butterfly. So the theatricality and the operatics of these stories, these incredibly insane scenarios that Cronenberg creates, he's got that artistic side to him as well. He's massively invested in the science behind these stories, but also the acting and the bravura nature of his set pieces lend themselves to dynamic live on stage performances, and he's sussed that out. And you can see how The Fly would definitely work as a 3-act sort of structure. It is such a wonderful movie. Goldblum and his crazy ways, his mannerisms, his speech, his crazy sort of curly, thick, wavy hair, which is wonderful. I wanted to try to mimic that, but because my hair is like that. But when I had my hair tied up the last few days, and when I took it down, it just cascaded down like this. So I thought, oh, bloody hell, mine's meant to be all curls and waves and stuff, but I was going to be Jeff Goldblum, all twitchy and buzzing and throwing up, you know. But the hair let me down. So, something went wrong in the lab today. Be afraid. Be very afraid. One of the 80s greatest body horror movies, and still revered by critics alike today. Audiences still love it. I said in my previous video about the the trials and tribulations of trying to actually watch The Fly in order to do the full review, because I hadn't seen the film for years. I said that when the film was first coming out, and it came out just before Aliens did, and they were playing the trailer for it just before Aliens, and it was a very brief trailer, and it was just, in fact, that title sequence where you got the buzzing lettering, glowing green of The Fly buzzing across the screen, that was done for the trailer, but Cronenberg said, that's bloody good, let's keep that as our title sequence, so it's in the title sequence. And all the trailer was that we got before Aliens in the UK was him smashing through the window to go and grab Ronnie and spit his hair and the unborn child away. And then it went, The Fly. And people in the audience were in hysterics. The Fly. Obviously none of them remembered the original movie. I just thought, the Fly sounds stupid. The Fly, what's that about? But I knew. And I was like, oh, shut up, will you? It's great. This is going to be great. It's Cronenberg. The effects are wonderful. I've seen some of the pictures in Fangoria. You guys are dickheads. Listen to me. And then when the film came out and we watched it, and I was loading my mates, and everyone in the audience was totally gripped. Women were screaming and shrieking. Some of the blokes were too. But then at the end, when the puppet comes out of the Fly fused with the telepod and just crawls towards it, going, oh, my mates were all laughing, and I was stunned. I hated every single one of them for that reason, because I was weeping, I was crying like mad, and it's the power of the emotion of the scene. Even though that's not Jeff Goldblum anymore, Gina Davis reacts perfectly to it. Her just horror of what she's had to go through and what could be inside there, and she just kill me. Just grabs the gun barrel, just put it there, just do it. Jesus, I've had enough of it. Swap me, for fuck's sake. I can't go through this anymore. I was crying like a baby, and these were all nudging me, going, and I go, wait, are you? What's up with you? And they started laughing at me then. Oh. Don't worry, they're all dead now. They met with strange accidents over the ensuing years. Anyway, folks, I could go on a lot more about this. The Fly is a marvellous movie. Cronenberg's direction is impeccable. The performances are extraordinary. Stathis Borans is a crazy character who you really, really hate, but you kind of like him at the same time because he's so stupidly funny and incendiary. And, will you just give it a rest, man? You're just thinking about precious bits all the time. There's something more involving going on here. But he does try to help her with the abortion, and he will try to save the day at the end. Okay, he doesn't quite manage to do that. What he does, he saves her from being fused with Brundlefly. So he does save the day. He is the hero. And a great character. Gina Davis playing opposite her then boyfriend. You can see all that emotion there, even when he's covered in all prosthetics. By the way, I mentioned all the stages of the different suits he was wearing, different stages of makeup. One of them you don't see in the movie, the finished movie, because that's the suit he wears during the baboon cat slaying, and then rooftop, the wrestle with your own insect leg sequence. That was the bodysuit from one element, which you don't see. So with that missed out, we go straight from teeth coming out and vomiting everywhere to the big bodysuit at the end and all the touchiness. So even with elaborate prosthetic makeup on, which took 5 hours and upwards to apply, you're still seeing Jeff Goldblum's performance in there. And that line, I'll hurt you if you stay. Oh, it's so resonant. And then on the roof when he's going, no. Oh, it's pure Quasimodo. People don't seem to make that reference. I've never seen anyone quote Hunchback of Notre Dame in his rooftop, through the turrets, looking down, and he's got one big bulbous eye, and he's fully deformed and misshapen, and he's in love. It's Quasimodo. The original 1958 movie is great, goofy creature feature hokum. It's very enjoyable, but it's not a patch on this. This has the effects, it has the story, it has raw emotion, And it has this wonderful score by Howard Shore, which is just extraordinary. Folks, I can do nothing but recommend The Fly. It's a modern horror masterpiece. I can't really call it a remake. People want to call it a remake, but it really isn't, is it? It's a further adaptation of the original Langerland short story. So it's a reinterpretation of that original material. And it improves upon it no end. I've read that short story and it's not particularly good. As Cronenberg says, it's a great premise, but it's not written very well. And the characters aren't rounded out. So Cronenberg, who for many people in his earlier movies like Shivers, Rabid, Scanners, they found his movies very impersonal. You couldn't empathise, you couldn't sympathise with the main characters. You were interested in the story, but not in them. I've always sort of teetered on that because I think Michael Ironside and Stephen Lack as the telepathic dueling brothers in Scanners are brilliant. And I think Samantha Eggar, Oliver Reed, and I forgot the other guy's name. Got his name. Art Hindle, I think that is. He was also in Invasion of the Body Snatchers with Jeff Goldblum, which was a remake. I think in The Brood, it's extraordinarily well acted. And then Videodrome, you got James Woods, and you got Debbie Harry, and you got these, Peter Dvorsky. These are great actors, and I do warm to them. Obviously, throughout the course of his career, Cronenberg's worked better with actors. And as he always says, there's nothing better than invading the head of these characters via the actors that you're directing. And I'm learning more about people by directing people. And you've got obviously Christopher Walken in The Dead Zone. These are all great actors. So, Viggo Mortensen, History of Violence and Eastern Promises, wonderful. And of course, his own remake of Crimes of the Future, one of his early short movies, which is brilliant. I recommend that as well. I'll cover that at some point. But Cronenberg was coming more to the fore, and this is the pinnacle for me. All the early films were riding up to The Fly. All the themes are explored in more emotional, raw, finite detail in The Fly that he actually had covered in all the earlier movies. Diseases, science gone awry, corruption, and just the corruption of the body as well as the corruption of the mind, and corporate corruption. That's all been prevalent in his material, but it all culminates totally and impeccably with The Fly. Folks, you've heard all the buzz, now go and watch the movie. I have been, always shall be Kilt-Man. I shall always be moved by movie music. And even just talking about, isn't it funny how even just talking about certain scenes, provoke that kind of reaction in me. That's how powerful the film is, folks. For me, certainly. For those that laughed at it, I don't get you. I really don't get you. But I think it's wonderful. And its seductive power and its resonance exists just as powerfully today. Folks, please keep it kilted, keep it Celtic, and I'm going to see you all later. Where the hell did that fly go? It did come in. I really hope, because it flew up just past here. A little cameo from Jeff himself, just putting the seal on the deal.